So I'm actually here representing Andrew Patterson, Michelle Kilcoy-Proft, and others that are part of the VR group. So I'm actually one of the new members. All my lovely team are either overseas or on paternity leave. So I'm it for today. So hopefully I'll be able to give you a good overview of what's been happening with particularly VR within the business school. Okay, so what are we going to have a look at today? In particular today we're going to have a look at what is VR, what has already been done in VR in the education space, an example from teaching negotiation, which is the big thing that Andrew has been doing in terms of Biz Management 2-in-1, which is understanding organisations, student responses, learning transfer of results, and then principles for the best practice in designing VR learning environments, and then the projects our collaborative team are and envisage to be developing in the future, which is where I'm going to really have a bit more of my say and my voice. Michael, you made this look so easy with two mics. Okay, so why use 360? Video in education and negotiation training. Well, observational learning, as Susan kind of said earlier on in her presentation, is very effective. It's how a lot of us do learn. And then there's also the issue of access to some situations is problematic. Especially in that negotiation space, it's really hard to find cases and examples that students can actually really truly learn from and get a deeper understanding. So the idea here was to enable students to have an experience of one step removed from reality, and I'll go into a bit more of that when I show you the stills about what they've actually done. It's also a safe learning environment. No one of us likes to be put into a situation where we feel like we are uncomfortable, we clamp up and we don't really engage in any way. So by being able to let our students be sort of onlookers, bystanders in a negotiation situation, they're able to really observe and really get a deeper understanding. 360 video VR as a supplementary tool. Why is it better than traditional video? It's immersive and non-immersive. Well, what I mean by immersive is that with the VR headsets that you saw Michael showing a moment ago, that's very much what we call immersive. It's where a person can feel like they're actually in that physical space. Non-immersive, and I'll show you again some stills with this, is where you might do it on a tablet or a computer and where you can kind of click and drag around the room and get an idea of that physical space. It better captures those non-verbal nuances. You can actually feel the emotion in the room, the emotion of the two people engaging with one another, and it overlays, doesn't disrupt the field of vision, and I'll go into this a little bit more. So, you feel as real as possible. It captures a deeper sense of verbal and non-verbal communication. What I mean by that is, as I mentioned a moment ago, the idea here is that you can feel the tension in the room, you can feel how people are using their language, how they're actually speaking, and you feel like you can understand where they're coming from. One step removed from actual reality is that you are going to be almost like you're sitting at the table with them. You're not directly engaged, but you're sitting at one point at the head of the table and you've got two people that are sitting on either side. Scalability. Michael mentioned the idea of the cost associated with this kind of VR equipment, and the idea with this is that we actually got some funding. We got professional development funding, which meant that we could actually purchase these virtual reality goggles, which are here, and we purchased around about 40 of these for the business school, and Andrew Patterson is kind of in charge of those, so if any of you are interested in using any of this or want to actually come and have a play yourself, they're there in his space. Each of them is kind of numbered in terms of when it's borrowed by students. So we actually let students take it away in teams and use it and run the negotiation VR package through that. And then they return them after they finish that particular assessment. Accessible, it's easy to use, and it's relatively cheap in terms of the fact that these cost about $30. So overall we have about 40 of them for about $1,200, so it's not too bad. I agree with Michael in terms of that you've got to be careful with students. Some of them may return them broken, so you need to, of course, very much be quite stringent with your students about what your expectations are as well. Real educational utility. It's adding value to where value has not been added previously. In 2016, when the business manager for IT approached Andrew and said to him, "We're getting some VR headsets, what do you think?" Andrew thought, how am I supposed to use that in my course? So he came up with a strategy of using it for negotiation. The idea of giving students the skill that they actually will need to transfer into the workplace. Something that I'm sure you'll need for accounting, for property, for engineering, for anything. We all negotiate all the time, whether it's our children to get out of bed in the morning, which can take endless amounts of time, or whatever it might be. So it's an important transferable skill that we feel is vital. So this is what it looks like. So what actually takes place is this is done with a 360 camera. So if you're wearing one of the headsets, you can actually look all around the room. It's, as Michael suggested, the images have been kind of put together really well. What you have is, in the negotiation scenario, you have a landlord and a tenant. You have the landlord wanting to have a month-by-month lease with a high initial down payment, and the tenant wanting something that's long-term with a low initial down payment. So when this has actually been created, what they've done is they haven't really gone by a script. It's very organic in the way that they've actually created the negotiation itself. So you're not having something that's just actors acting and it's something that's been scripted very carefully. It's about them being given two different things that they hope to achieve, and did they achieve it? In this instance, they don't come to a mutual agreement. Students are then asked to then watch this and see what are the things they potentially did wrong, and what are the different ways that they could have used concepts and things brought through from lectures and other principles that were taught on the course. So this is kind of the way it looks through a VR headset. You'd have these two images which you'd hit the button there, and then you'd have it all come together. Now, let me just go through. This is how it looks if you just do it on a tablet. So it's quite a different experience that you'll get between the two. It tries to accommodate for a situation where you might not have everybody able to use the VR headsets, or they might be out. So it gives students the two options of being able to do that. There was a YouTube clip. Andrew has it private, so I'm unable to access it at the moment to show you guys, unfortunately. And it actually shows the whole simulation that they've actually run. What I can do for any of you is, if you want to, I can meet with you individually and show you if you're interested in doing this further. So again, these are those headsets. There are more, what can I say? There's more funding that's been put forward on the table. So Andrew has actually purchased a new 360 camera that's valued at about $4,000. So it's got better resolution, better images, and that kind of thing. And also the headsets, also there's some new ones that we're also upgrading as well. Also because of the size of the classes as well that we are having to deal with, as I'm sure you're all aware. Right, so what are the two delivery packages? We have two different ways that this has been delivered. We have a lecture where, of course, students will get the principles and key concepts, and then you will have the immersive 17-minute video. Now, the video has interviews, negotiation, and reflection as well. There's also tied into that part of that longer assessment is that they have an assessment task. Why was no deal reached? What would you do differently? And then you have to do a team video presentation. So it's really inbuilt into their course and inbuilt into the assessment structure. For this one, which is the 9-minute version, you have an immersive video, as we've sort of shown you before. They do a negotiation, and they watch the negotiation only. There's only about 2 issues that are done in that. So overall, you can have a situation where in the first one there are 5 issues that will be covered, in the second one only 2 issues are covered. In this one here, then you pair up with another person in the class and you run through potentially what could be done differently, and you run through a simulation on that. And then you have a debrief and a conclusion. So with the pedagogical underpinnings, I'm sorry to tell about I thought I drank lots of water before I came up here. It's amazing how quickly your throat gets dry. We have didactic and analogical learning. So didactic is where, of course, you're getting those key concepts and principles coming through in the lecture, and then analogical is where that's kind of has more anecdotes and different things kind of peppered through it to really give that more depth of understanding. The immersive 360 experience, you have a lot of observational learning, which I think is really valuable, and situated learning, and it's really authentic because it's organic. It's not something that as I said before, has been scripted. Thank you. Thank you. Negotiation and the simulation. Simulation, it's very experiential. They're learning by watching, and I, as a learner, found it really valuable not reading a lot of textbooks and things on this, but to really watch what other people do. That's how I learn, and I find that I'm trying to incorporate that more into my own teaching. The debriefing is really important. It reinforces what they've seen. It reinforces how potentially it could go one way. What could you incorporate in another way to develop a different outcome? So that's really important. So assessment, I can show you, Andrew has given me his rubric that he uses for that particular assessment, and then also how he gives feedback as well. He's very much tried to incorporate the graduate profiles because, of course, we want these skills to be transferable, not just to sit in an assessment and just to tick a few boxes. So it's about disciplinary knowledge, it's about solution seeking, it's about communication and engagement. So in terms of the findings that Andrew has come through with, these are some of the findings that he found, that when he asked students about how they understood the emotions of the negotiators, you had about 98% of students saying that they felt that they could really understand what the emotions were. We moved through these, and a lot of students are saying that they enjoyed the negotiation video. What we found really interesting in particular was the self-efficacy. So before the lecture, you had about 54% saying they had confidence in their ability to negotiate. Then after the lecture, it went to 73%. And then again, after the VR experience, it was 69%. And then after the simulation, it was 90%. That was all just done at Auckland University. The results were also then replicated when Andrew went over to China, and those results were quite outstanding. So what actually happened was he found that in this section, particularly here, there was 100% change. So 100% of those that were involved said that they really felt that they were a lot more confident in that negotiation space now. Also, the same video was used, so it wasn't adapted at all to the Chinese market. So it was really good to see what we were able to achieve in that way. So where to next? Add interactive components to the video case. And what I mean by this is that in the video case, we're trying to include captions in there, trying to include multi-choice questions, so you're testing the knowledge and really getting people to think. Also maybe putting in some really, what I might say is thought-provoking questions, more depth in the questions. Continue developing VR case material, because this is an area that's completely, there's hardly anything there. So it's something that needs to be done from scratch. Also, we'd like to do some 360 video lectures, 360 recordings as sort of reflecting and teaching tools for both academic staff. So further empirical research we feel is needed to really see, because as you can see, the samples have been kind of varying. The samples in China were small, so the samples were about 20 people or less. So where to next? Add interactive components to the video case. And what I mean by this is that in the video case, we're trying to include captions in there, trying to include multi-choice questions, so you're testing the knowledge and really getting people to think. Also maybe putting in some really, what I might say is thought-provoking questions, more depth in the questions. Continue developing VR case material, because this is an area that's completely, there's hardly anything there. So it's something that needs to be done from scratch. Also, we'd like to do some 360 video lectures, 360 recordings as sort of reflecting and teaching tools for both academic staff. So Further empirical research we feel is needed to really see, because as you can see, the samples have been kind of varying. The samples in China were small, so the samples were about 20 people or less, and they were normally a mixture of either students as well as kind of upper management within the university sector. So, ongoing initiatives. So our group really wants to see that VR content creation studio, there is, with David you mentioned, he's quite keen to let us use his space, also over at the science faculty being able to use that. Further iterations of immersive virtual reality negotiation. So I think trying to be able to make more of these particular examples so it doesn't become dead in the water or people say, oh, we've seen that one before. Mindful learning, research and industry applications are a big thing. So what in particular I'd actually like to do is I teach international human resource management and I also teach marketing. And another paper called Managing People in Organisations. A lot of the students that we deal with are predominantly from overseas, have never had a job, so they don't really know anything, such as we run a board meeting towards the end of our course. They've never been in a board meeting. So being able to give them that experience of being able to sit as a board member and actually watch what happens in a board meeting. Or have you had in an HR situation, we've all had performance reviews, but you know how daunting they are. Imagine if you've never ever had one and being able to give students that experience of actually sitting and watching what happens between an employer and an employee. Similar is also the idea in marketing is to be able to see what it can be done with a client and also with marketing managers as well in different firms. So this is kind of where we're hoping to go. Andrew's also got good contacts in the New Zealand Navy who are also asking him to come through and use that with their top brass as well. So it's onwards and upwards. So I think now I will open up for questions.